Good morning, witches! Welcome back to Witches of the Moon, Season 11, Week 2. I am your Monday host, Natalie, and this week we are discussing the recent loss of leadership in the witchy community. Now, I did a video on this topic a few weeks back because this topic was actually kind of inspired by a Facebook discussion that came up, and this was one that was requested actually by a viewer as well. So it was kind of interesting how that worked out. And I'm just going to kind of rehash what I did on my video, but not do it quite the same way, I guess. If you want to go watch that video, you're welcome to. But the gist of my video there was, for those of you that don't know Matt Aron, he is a gifted tarot reader out of the California area. He has a lot of celebrity clients, and somebody made a comment about who's going to take over the leadership in the witchy community with the recent losses. We've lost Raven Grimassi, who has written several books and often talked at things like X Fest and things like that, and gave workshops. He led the Ash, Birch, and Willow tradition with his wife, Stephanie Taylor, and he was a very active part of the community for many years. Then we also lost last year Raymond Buckland, who was the father of modern witchcraft in the United States. We've lost Aidan McCoy. There's been a few prominent shop owners who've passed, and just some other witches that were very well known. And so this whole idea of somebody was saying, oh my God, who's going to be the next leader in the community? And that really struck kind of a bad chord with me. And I'll explain why. First of all, yes, these people were very influential in the craft and were very important on my path in terms of I gleaned something from the writings of each one of these people, because when you're new to the craft, where do you turn? You turn to places like YouTube, you turn to places like the bookstore, and you start reading things, and then you start talking to people, and then you start growing and kind of finding your own way on the path, right? So you look for leadership when you're new to the path, but where it kind of left me with a bad taste was the impression I got from this person was like, oh my God, there's no more leadership. What are we going to do? And that to me smacked of somebody who needed a dogmatic type of leadership. And I found that very, I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. First of all, there's still plenty of people who are taking a leadership role in the craft. And that would include people like Lady Gravedancer, who puts out videos pretty frequently. Crescent Moon is starting to rise up in the YouTube community, and she often does videos with Lady Gravedancer. You've got people like Matt Aron. He's got a new book coming out. Joey Morris has written 3 books now. Songs of Shade 2, and I think there's a third one that she wrote, but I can't remember the title at the moment. Sorry, Joey. And of course, you've got people like Timothy Roderick. You've got people like Christopher Pinchik. You've got people like Laurie Cabot and Laurie Stephanopoulos, who owns Crowhaven Corner, I think it's called, in Salem. I haven't been to Salem yet, sorry. So there are plenty of people still taking a leadership role. Your hosts here on Witches of the Moon, we've taken on sort of a leadership role in the community by presenting videos for people who are finding their way on the craft. And as you'll see, as you watch each of our videos, we each have our own take on these different things. Now, it's my belief that this path is extremely individuated, that we don't have a set dogma, one way that makes it absolutely correct. And that was one of the things that really drew me to the path, is that you're really responsible for your own craft, aren't you? For your own magic. You are responsible for what you do. So you have to do what resonates with you. Now, there's guidance. I mean, there's general correspondences. We know that certain herbs correspond well to certain things because of the wisdom of time and our ancestors, okay? So that was one of the things that Raven Grimassi was very prominent in promoting, was that, you know, there's a lot of this, you know, individualism in the craft, which is good because it is your path, but at the same time, there have to be core values that make you a witch, okay? Now, I agree with that to an extent, but I disagree. I mean, I think all witches practice with a basic set of universal law. Okay, I think we're more ruled by universal law than anything else. So it's the idea that um, you take responsibility for your actions. You don't have a set leadership that's telling you what you need to think and how you need to believe. And that was what that person's comment kind of left in my mouth. Was it seemed very bitter, like a again, like a dogmatic kind of thing. Like, oh my goodness, what's happened to all the leadership? And it reminded me a lot of, it just made me flash back to a lot of my youth when there would be little arguments within the church, and this person would go off and start their church over here. This person would go off and start their church over here. And it's like, who's right? Well, on the path of the craft, to each their own, with, the idea that what calls to you is going to answer to you, but you're responsible for what you do. And so I really found that disturbing. So here's my gist to that. Here was my point to that too. If you feel like you must have leadership in the craft, I would suggest you take a deep look at why you think that. What is it about your magic that makes you think you need somebody to lead you, per se? Because I believe that leadership as a whole emerges on its own. There are always going to be those that step to the forefront that say, hey, I'm here to share my knowledge with other people. Now, I have no problem with that, clearly, because that's why I'm here, which is the moon. That's why I have my personal channel, and that's why I have the Purple Broom Apothecary. I mean, clearly, I like to share what I have learned with others, because this is a process of learning for me, too. So by sharing what I have learned or my take on certain things with you all and getting your feedback, I grow. And I hope that in some way I help you to grow and that we help you to grow. That's the whole point. That's why I like to watch each of the hosts' videos, because I always glean a little something from other people's perspectives. Sometimes people come up with something that I hadn't thought of, and I'm like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. So in my opinion, leadership always rises on its own. But if you really feel like you need that leadership, is it because you're very new to your path? Is it that you lack the self-confidence you need to step out in the craft and be the witch that you are? Maybe this path isn't for you. Not everybody is cut out for the path of witchcraft. I mean, I do think that everybody has psychic ability. I think that's true, because I think that's one of the things that connects us. I think it is a connection at the fifth and above dimensional level that connects us all. It's like a web, like an internet kind of thing. That's how I sort of see it. That's the kind of concept I put it into in order to make it relatable. Okay. But I also think that not everybody has the ability to tap into that just on their own. And I think that there's a lot of people that, due to the way they were raised or outside influences or just their personal beliefs that they hold in their heart, don't believe in it. So it's one of those things where, like in the movie Practical Magic, you can't practice witchcraft looking down your nose at it. So I think that there are a lot of people that find it interesting. They kind of get into it, but their heart's not really there. It's not a path that calls to them. And so they don't really flourish in craft. So that may be the case. Maybe it's just not the right path. So I suggest that if you truly feel like you absolutely need leadership, you do a little bit of shadow work and find out what it is that's making you feel like you need to be guided. Because I do believe that your ancestors and your spirit will guide you if this is the path for you. So again, it could just be a little bit of lack of self-confidence. Maybe you just need to step out and practice more to realize that you have that power within you. Maybe you need to take a leadership role yourself. Maybe you need to step into that role in order to realize the potential that leadership will always be there. And there will always be those that take on a leadership role, that feel they have some sort of knowledge or learning or something to share and to gain back from those. Because you don't teach just to share what you've learned. You teach in order to learn and to grow and to gain ideas from others. I truly do believe that. So I think that this would be a really good time to kind of take a look at that. That being said, it is always devastating when someone prominent in the community leaves us. And I know that I'm certain that Raven's passing is hard on Stephanie and all those who knew him personally, because he had a certain way about him. He was funny. He was entertaining to listen to. He had, if you're interested, they have a podcast uh, that is up on iTunes, and I'm certain you can probably get it for Android too. But it was really entertaining to hear the two-part series that he did about himself and his history and how he came into the craft. That kind of follows on last week's theme. So again, I don't worry about leadership because that's going to show itself. And I don't feel that I have to have a specific leader to guide me in anything. There may be times when I'm not certain on a certain thing because my knowledge isn't as great in that area. And then I will look to somebody who has a little bit more knowledge than myself. But I don't know that I necessarily need a leader. Again, that kind of leads you towards that dogmatic belief. Another thing is, if you feel like you need some leadership and guidance in the craft, because maybe you're new to the craft, perhaps solitary practice isn't for you. Look to a coven where you can have a high priest and high priestess who can guide you in your learning and your knowledge. Perhaps the traditional path is more the path that you need to look towards, rather than a solitary practice. So that was another point that I didn't bring up in my personal video that just occurred to me right now. So in any case, that's my take on the recent loss of leadership in the community. It's always sad when, someone who has really made an influence has passed, especially if you haven't had a chance to tell them. I think you want to let people know when they've influenced you. And I think it's important to kind of keep that respect for those who do take a leadership role. You may not agree with everything they say, but hey, they stepped out there and they put it in the forefront. But at the same time, I don't think that you have to rely so much on leadership that you allow your own personal practice to just be led by others, because then it's not your practice, it's everybody else's. And then you're not a part of a group. You're looking for almost a cult. So please, 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 don't stress so much that prominent people come and go, because that's true with everything. You have to look within in order to find the leadership within yourself. So that's my spiel on that. Thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.